If you wanna be my lover, you gotta get with my friends. Make it last forever. Friendship never ends. If you wanna be my lover, you have got to give. Taking is too easy, but that's the way it is. Stop your body down.
The program will begin in 10 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Lisa Mateo.
Wow, we're standing room only, are we? Thank you, everyone. Welcome to Bloomberg's Building an AI Future-Ready Business. Today, what I want to say first off is thank you to all of you who braved the heat out here and made it over here to New York City. We are also live streaming the event, so thank you to those of you who are tuning into the live stream as well. Now, before we started this session, we had a QR code up there, and it was asking a poll question. Okay, so the question that we polled the audience, just to get a better idea of where you are along your AI journey, it was, which best describes where your organization is with agentic AI today? So the first option you had was exploring, no live cases yet. Scaling was another option, 1 to 2 functions. Piloting is a few experiments in motion. And finally, enterprise rollout. That's a multi-function governed program. So what we've found from the polling so far is that we're tied. 43% are exploring, 43% are scaling, and about 14% are piloting. So it just goes to show you the difference of everybody in the room, but also how things are changing so fast. Because the pace of AI adoption, it has increased exponentially. It has gone from beyond just asking, should we use AI, to questions like, how do we scale it? How do we trust it? How do we govern it? How do we integrate it? And now, how do you get people comfortable with using it? So the next phase of AI, it's just not about experimentation, it's about transformation as well. And that's what we're going to get into a lot here for today. It's a transformation. We'll be talking with a lot of leaders for today who will talk about how they have found value in workflow transformation. We'll dig into some of their AI strategies on top of that, and also learn more about how data is key and central to so much that they do. And basically that takes you overall to how to build an AI future-ready business. Are you guys ready? Okay, let's get started. Before we do, though, I do have a couple of announcements. First off, I would like to thank Kyndryl for their sponsorship for today. You're going to be hearing from them in just a few moments, so stay tuned for that. Next up, I want everyone here to take part in the conversation. We have a nice selection of people who are going to be on the stage. If you would like to ask a question, all you have to do is scan the QR code. There are QR codes on your table. There will be some on the screen as well. You can scan it, write in your question, and we'll try our very best to get it answered here on the stage for today. Also, if you scan that QR code, it'll also bring up the agenda so you can see who's coming up next on the stage. Also, if you participate in social media, if you take part, don't forget to use hashtag FutureReadyBiz. We'll be following along. You can follow along with the highlights for today and over at Bloomberg Live as well. If you are not following us, shame on you. I'm kidding. Give us a follow over at Bloomberg Live. And don't forget to use hashtag FutureReadyBiz in case you post anything for today, any insights or any pictures that you do post for today. Wi-Fi, very important. If you need the Wi-Fi, you can find it under Convene Guest. No password is required for it. All right, guys, let's get things started for today. I'd like to welcome to the stage Kurt Anderson. He is Senior Vice President for Kyndryl US with our opening remarks.
Thank you, Lisa. What a great crowd. I was wondering if we accidentally went over to the Garden instead. So I know there's a big Knicks game tonight, so looking forward to that. But on behalf of Kyndryl, let me thank Bloomberg for bringing us together for this kind of space to have this kind of conversation. Events like this matter, and they matter because enterprise transformation doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when leaders step back, compare notes, and challenge a few assumptions. And assumptions are a great place to start. One of the things we've learned with working with large enterprises is how easy it is to assume that everyone is starting at the same place, especially when it comes to AI. But the reality is far more uneven. Let me share an experience that I'm always reminded of when I speak on topics like this. So I was raised in a small town in Alberta, Canada. And like most kids there, my life revolved around hockey. I played hockey constantly. Go fast forward a few years, I found myself married with children, living in Connecticut, and I found myself always coaching my boys' hockey teams. Not that I was a great coach, but I was a dad who could skate. So I was on the ice. And I had my 7-year-old team, and you know how kids are, so it was always like 5 kids around the puck constantly. Everywhere they went, it was 5 kids around the puck. So I was determined that I was going to change this. So I got out my whiteboard, and I was going to teach them defensive strategy. So when the puck is in our end, this is what you do. So I got my whiteboard, and I said, right winger, this is your space to cover. Center, this is your space. Left wing, this is your space, and so on. You get the picture. The kids were listening. I knew my point was getting across. And I felt good about the explanation that I'd given. And I said, okay, let's go out on the ice and practice what we just learned. And I said, any questions before we start? And I still remember this kid, Jake. Jake puts his hand in the air and says, Coach Anderson, what is defense? It's like, there it is. It's like, be careful what you assume when you speak. That lesson has stayed with me. Whenever we're coaching kids, leading teams, adopting AI, transforming a business, clarity matters. And we cannot assume everyone starts on the same place. Today, many of you find yourselves standing at the same whiteboard that I was, explaining positions to your teams, drawing diagrams, confident that your picture is clear to everyone you're explaining it to. As agentic AI becomes more prevalent, the definition of work itself is changing. Roles are being shaped, not eliminated. Teams are becoming blended. But our research tells us that more than 70% of business leaders don't feel their employees are successfully leveraging AI in their everyday work. That tension between rapid capability and human readiness is defining the moment. At Kyndryl, we are in the middle of this reality. We work with mission-critical systems that enterprises depend on every day, the systems that have to work. They have to work at scale. They have to be trusted. Our role is to help the leaders modernize those foundations, simplify complexity, and create the conditions where AI can move from experimental to sustained impact. And across industries, the organizations that are pulling ahead, like many of you here, have something in common. They're not trying to replace people with AI. They're intentionally designing human plus AI operating models with clear roles, governed systems, and modernized workflows that allow both to perform better together. That brings us directly to today's first panel, the new workforce building human plus AI model. This isn't a future data topic, it's happening right now. And it cuts across technology, talent, and leadership. There's no better person to lead this discussion today than Jamie Rutledge, president of Kyndryl US. Jamie works with CEOs, CIOs, boards who are navigating this transition in real time. He'll be joined by leaders from Panasonic, New York Life, and Citizens Bank, who are living these changes inside their organizations, along with Bloomberg's lens on what workforce shift signals for the industry's broader economy. With that, let me turn it over to Jamie in our first panel. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
What if the key to unlocking your competitive advantage is inside your data and infrastructure? The right partner can run your systems while reimagining your future with AI. Kyndryl is that partner with technical insight and strategic foresight, pairing AI expertise and experienced human instincts. We run and reimagine the mission-critical technology systems that power the world's leading businesses. Unlock your inside edge.
First of all, I want to thank whoever is handling the air conditioner. That's really the main technology I want to focus on today. I'm Seth Fickerman. I'm an editor at Bloomberg News focused on AI, and I spend a lot of my time talking to and thinking about the companies that are building AI models. But I'm excited for this conversation to talk to people on the front lines and figure out how to use that technology and determine whether this stuff is broadly applied across the economy. Before we get into discussing best practices, success stories, and learnings from the last year or two, I thought it'd be good to kind of go back a year or so. And maybe, Liz, we can start with you to talk about kind of the early days at your company. What was sort of the reaction among employees as you were thinking about encouraging folks to begin using AI and AI agents more? And how did you manage any, let's call it, hesitation or concerns among those ranks?
I think that's a great question, and I have to own my truth because I was one of the first ones to be skeptical, right? And just wonder, really, how is this creating value? How is this different than any other tool that's been introduced into the workforce? And do we really understand what business issues we're solving with this tool, right? What is the hype around it versus what is the material impact we can have with AI? It was our CIO that kept pushing me to think about more broadly, and then what really got me excited was thinking about how does this shift the capabilities we're going to need more broadly across the organization? Not so much the technology, but how does it shift the ways that we work, connect with each other, and collaborate?
Has your thinking, for anyone here, changed on maybe in those early days thinking, well, this is just a tool for developers, for coders on staff, or for customer support versus for everyone? And when did that shift happen, thinking about who and how to deploy the technology internally?
Yeah, I think at Citizens, we've deployed it across the whole bank, so everybody's got access to it. What we're finding is that, you know, the people in wealth management are starting to use it and develop apps on their own. So they're developing things at home and they're bringing it into the workplace and saying, how can I replicate this? So then a light bulb went on how easy some of this new technology is to use, especially things like Claude that has just absolutely changed the game.
Right.
So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see less in the hands of coders and more in the hands of the business. So it's going to be a fundamental change.
Kathleen, I remember you saying, I think initially you thought it's just going to be for a select group, maybe
Right.
not for all.
Yeah, I think we early on learned two lessons. One was around deployment and one was around adoption, and they were both connected. So with deployment, when we first thought about it, there was certainly pockets of the organization that we recognized and there would be a real connection with AI. But then we realized, you know what, there's so much power here, and why would we only give it to the hands of a few employees? Let's roll it out to the entire company. So we rolled out Copilot and ChatGPT to all employees, and then additional AI tools depending upon roles and functions. And democratizing that really was a key step, but it wasn't a game changer, because it wasn't like if you build it, they will come, right? People didn't necessarily understand how does AI fit into my everyday role. Right. And so then we recognized that this wasn't just a tech deployment, this really was about people and what we were doing to through a enterprise-wide change management effort. And so then we shifted our focus there and helped people understand use cases and gave people tools and tips. We call it Ignite AI. And that was what was really game changing for us, was that shift from tech deployment to enterprise-wide change management behavioral shift.
You kind of alluded to it, but I think all of you, or most of you, have pretty intentional programs now in-house to get people comfortable with this technology. Some of it may be mandatory, some of it may be not. Can you kind of walk me through, Jamie or Liz, how you think about the in-house training programs and upskilling there?
Let me, just before we go to that,
Sure.
I wanted to comment about the technology. I agree
Please.
with Kathleen, right? It's, the tech is evolutionary for us. It's proven to work. It's all right now the deployment at scale and the adoption. That's the hard part. To what Liz was saying, the workplace is fundamentally changing, right? So speed, workplace is changing. How we execute, changing, right? How we learn, that's hard and that's changing. Leadership, foundational things, creativity, how we actually ask the right questions, how we can be uncertain, right? That's a uniquely human thing. All of those, they don't change. That's a consistent thing. I think that adopting this broadly, I think to Kathleen's point, the organizational change management, that's hard. Change is hard for a lot of people, and you have to go at their pace as an individual. I think you have to paint a picture of how, especially the agents, can be sort of part of the workforce, not as a member of the workforce, but more of a, this is a way to do more intelligent work by using agents to do that. So that's how I see it.
Kathleen, I recall your program is something, there's a mandatory component to it, is that right? You want to tell us a bit about that?
We had mandatory training. We looked at starting with our leadership. I think what's a little different here is also thinking about the role of the leader, and even in terms of capabilities of leadership. Technology is becoming so much more important as a core foundational leadership, not in the sense that people need to have deep technical skills, but people need to be able to understand sort of how to reimagine work and how to help get your employees excited and confident in using it. So we have Lead Forward is a management training program for executive officers and our managers that help with this sort of change management component. And then from an AI perspective, it really did start at the top and it cascaded down. And then there were things that we required people to do, but then there was a lot of opt-in. And like I said, that Ignite AI program has just been there's such enthusiasm around the company.
Jamie, I think when we spoke, you mentioned that you have pretty clear metrics that you're using to track both the adoption of it and the productivity gains from it. Can you kind of walk us through that and how those came about? What you're
so we use AI to have value, right? So there's value in terms of productivity of the workforce. There's also value in enabling our customers to have their strategy go a little bit faster. So there's balance there. On the productivity side, we look at this. This is the next wave of, I mean, there's automation, there's all kinds of AI. This is a story that's a continuum, and we're seeing that come up. The way we approach it, similar to the comments of the rest of the panelists here, is we make it a very much a personal thing. So at an individual level, we want to take work off people. We want to free them up to do other things. We inject education so there's something in it for them. What I've found is most people want to learn. Most people want to develop their career, especially the technical groups that I manage. They want to do a lot more. They want to do different things. So if you can enable that, that works very well. On the business side, right, when I talk to customers, it's an accelerator. That's where we see it. It's yes, it's a way to be competitive in pricing. That's one thing. But ultimately it means, well, there's fewer defects. There's more predictability. There's a better way of doing things at a speed of execution that we haven't done before.
When we cover the technology, we often think that it can be lumpy. There's some categories where it's immensely helpful, and there's others where maybe a little bit more flawed. I wonder if you're the brave among you want to talk about, what's an area of your business where it's been uniquely helpful and an accelerant, and what's a department or area where you're figuring it out.
I think from a software engineering perspective, is definitely been a game changer.
Sure.
I mean, when I look at the stats last month, we've generated now 3 times as much code as we were last year. So there's definitely adoption across all of our developers, and they love the technology. They're now using it as well with our business partners to generate business specs, generate user stories, groom user stories. So definitely across that whole SDLC life cycle, I'm seeing that shrink. And it's very easy to measure, right, because I can measure the number of commits of code, the lines of code, the defect ratio of code. So it's a lot easier to measure. Where we struggle is it's very hard to measure that productivity across the whole company, right, where, to Jamie's point, yes, we think there's efficiency, but when it's just a lot harder to measure if someone is doing a PowerPoint a lot faster than they were, before. Right. What we found hard, I would say, is on some of the business use cases, it really exposes the quality of the data that you have. And what you find out is that many of the procedures are incorrect, or there's different versioning of it, and AI is relentless in finding that. And you've got to have that human in the loop that's validating the quality of that. Right. And what's happening is some of those business use cases take a lot longer to get in, but once they're in, they are truly adding value. So a good example is a knowledge management system that we've used for our customer service reps. So now they can type in a question from a customer, and it will give them the answer for what product they should advise that customer to take. So it speeds up the call handling time, gives better experience to the customer, measured by NPS scores. But it took us a lot longer to deliver that because of some of the data quality challenges we had.
Does that resonate with other folks here in terms of, yes, on coding, for example, it's an accelerant, but maybe some other areas harder to figure out?
I will share that for us. I think lumpy, is that how you described it?
That is what I said. Feel free to use your own word.
So where it felt lumpy is where we didn't understand what we were solving for. And we were just taking the technology and pointing at it, which is great that we're curious and excited about it. But understanding how that's going to drive value across the organization, and it goes back to, I think, Kathleen, some of the work you're doing around training leaders and helping the organization more broadly understand how to develop a use case. What does that mean? What does that look like? Are you solving an issue for yourself as an individual? So how can I be more productive? Or are you solving something more broad across the ecosystem? and how is that interconnected to other parts of the organization?
If I could, I'll add on to Liz, is one of the hardest things for us is teaching people to think differently. So that's really hard, right? Because it's based on years of experience, and getting people to ask the right questions, right? That's because most people come into a problem that they're certain of the problem. They're not certain of the problem. They don't really know. They're actually uncertain by definition. That's why we have a problem. So asking the right questions and getting to the point, but then also being able to, Michael said, the human in the loop, or how you actually pair with that. AI has AI always gives you an answer. AI is never uncertain. So the balance between asking the right question and being uncertain and iterating there with the data problems, that's hard. That's really hard. But it centers into the teaching people to think differently.
And I think it's also, like we're thinking about it a little bit twofold, like to your point, Liz, like there's certainly avenues where we have employees just experimenting and thinking about how they can do their job differently and coming up with some really cool work. But in terms of big bets, we're being very deliberate as a company, and we've really identified where we think we know we're going to have, we're shooting for better outcomes for our employees or our customers. Like there's a real clear goal and direction, and then taking that and like sort of self-funding the next set and like really trying to drive transformation that way, but really narrowing it down to those few things that we think are really going to be able to deliver value to the customer.
Certainly in our world, including today, I think at the top of the Bloomberg terminal for a lot of the day was a story about Standard Chartered cutting staff in part because of AI, or maybe entirely because of AI. I don't think I've seen comparable announcements from the group here, but how do you think about what the staffing needs might look like 12 or 18 months from now as you're watching this technology spread through your organizations? Are there certain arms of the company where you see, yeah, we're going to double down on that, maybe others where you kind of keep it flat or as is?
We've done a pretty deep analysis of that, and we're seeing the jobs really shift, but we're not really seeing a significant reduction. So, as we look at the role, say, of the software engineer, we see some of them will pivot and become more business orientated, maybe product owners who are using some of this low code, no code to develop solutions that still require that logic in the brain. We're seeing we're going to need more testers.
Right.
The lines of code that are being generated is going to go up exponentially. Someone's got to review that code. You're going to need more software engineers who are very highly skilled in performance tuning and testing. So that type of role is going to increase. So certainly as I've looked at my staffing levels in tech, I don't see it reducing. Now, in operations, it's a little different, right? So where we're seeing a lot of automation, you think of things like claims processing, which is one of the areas where we're starting to explore some of the agentic technology. That, I think, ultimately you will be able to take out heads. And the question becomes, do you redeploy those heads somewhere else? Do you put them into relationship roles? Do you put them into customer-facing roles? So those are the type of things we're thinking about. And we also have a big upskilling program that goes along with that says, here's some of the new roles that are being created.
Does that track for other folks here, the balance?
I think of it more as, for us at this point in time, as not doing, more with less, but like more with more, how we shift to more value-added work and help employees, sort of recognize, like take away some of the more administrative tasks or what it may be to free up capacity to then focus in on really value-added work. It's kind of our focus right now.
Yeah, very similar to us.
Yeah.
It's people want to do intelligent work. So the definition of intelligent work is moving fast, and that's normal. I think that the problem statement for me is really on learning. I have to say, at Kyndryl, people are the most valuable thing in the company. People are valuable, straight up. That's what makes the firm. When you look at productivity, question is the people, when they free up capacity, do they learn something new? And what I found is somewhere between 80 to 90%, they do learn. The rest don't.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the break point for me, is if you're able to learn, we have roles for you. If you're not, then that's a challenge.
Jamie, I feel like you've hit this in different ways in your responses already, but to ask it to you directly, what today do you feel like are the biggest limiting factors of the technology, the biggest headaches or concerns that you see with it? You've mentioned uncertainty as an example of that.
I think it's a behavior and a focus. That's what I see. Right? I love what Kathleen was saying around focus on specific cases. We call them proof of outcomes because there's no proof of concept. The tech works, right? It's kind of a done thing from my point of view. But then this mindset change, and there's cultural elements too, depending on what country you're in. It's hard. That's hard. So those I see are the biggest impediments. It's not the tech. It's not the tech. The deployment is focus and money and prioritization. That's it. I think in this adoption, you're going to run into mindset, cultural issues, and really ingrained sort of ways of thinking, ways of working that we're going to have to challenge.
Certainly a big storyline in our world too is that companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, the big model makers, are investing quite heavily right now in forward deployed engineers to help businesses, presumably like your own, better adopt and customize the tech. Do you see, has that been a bottleneck until now, and do you see that as cause for optimism and making the most of this technology in the years ahead? To any folks there?
I guess I can comment on that one. I don't think so. When we look at all these technologies, they're great technologies. I'm not sure which is the one to use. We try to use as many as possible. Make sure we built a framework so it gives our customers options. I'm not sure. I really want to get to the point of this is the one to use. I think there's specific places for different ones, and it depends. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
It's a little bit uncertainty. I don't know. Yeah.
And we've done the same thing, Seth. We've built a very open architecture. So because these models keep leapfrogging each other. So if I want to use an OpenAI model, I can. I want to use an Anthropic model. I want to use Gemini. So I want to use Microsoft. So we've built that type of platform that can take advantage of best in breed. And frankly, you can't get hold of anybody at Anthropic right now. They're not picking up the phone. They are so busy that you just it's. I do think that you have to keep that open mindset and not, as Jamie said, not rely on one tool set for some of this.
Great detail.
I'll just add to that. I think I haven't seen one tool, one size fits all. I think many organizations have to think about what's fit for purpose for them in that moment and what needs continue to evolve. At Panasonic, or our organization, we have so many different lines of businesses, and so the tools have to be relevant to the context of that business. And employees have to understand first they have to understand which problem they're solving for, and then which tool best fits to help solve for that.
We talked a bit about sort of the internal programs for upskilling your own employee base, but the other piece of that is, of course, thinking about governance. I know this is an issue near and dear to your heart. Do you want to maybe walk through a bit about how your approach to that has evolved and whether it's getting harder or more complicated as the technology gets more complicated?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, from the very beginning, certainly governance, security has been top of mind. We're a bank. We're, number one priority to protecting our customers' data. So we introduced a AI council that reviews every AI use case. Every AI use case we've deployed has a human in the loop that checks the output. We've implemented guardrails, but it's definitely getting more, to your point, as we get to multi-agents, it's definitely getting more difficult. So now we've had to deploy things like kill switches. We have to look, not only for, hallucinations, but now are these agents talking to each other? How much tokens are they using? Is it getting out of control? So, I think there's a lot of different things that as the technology develops, we're also having to move very, very quickly to think of our governance processes and what we need to do. And then there's also the threats. Anthropic have just announced Mythos that is going to expose all these vulnerabilities in the code.
Right.
So you have to be prepared to completely change the way that you patch your systems more rapidly than you did before to cope with this, because it's going to surface, these new LLMs will surface more vulnerabilities. So definitely it's top of mind for us.
Liz, I feel like when we spoke, you'd mentioned something like you probably should have given just a little bit more thought earlier on with the government's piece of it. How has that thinking evolved for you?
We continue to evolve it as the business continues to drive the adoption in different ways. So because we have such a diverse business, the state of readiness for each business and how they're adopting and embedding it into their practices and ways of working is different. The thing that keeps me up at night is striking the right balance between the momentum that each of the businesses have around leveraging this and thinking about work redesign, really applying design thinking principles to the user experience there, but it's the agent sprawl and that governance around how do you strike the balance between keeping the momentum going, but understanding what's happening within the ecosystem and the framework that people will operate within.
I agree with her completely on that. I see there's balance. I think that's the word used, and that resonates with me. Security, big deal. Got all the policies around that. I mean, this is powerful stuff. Data is important stuff, right? That's important, and getting all those guardrails right. The inventory around it, that's a new problem. What's the inventory of your agents? I'd challenge anyone to actually know. I don't think they know. Right, that's a thing. But then there's also a balance point of you want, at least I do, I want innovation in the field. I want innovation in front of customers. I want my people to go from an idea to a demo in days. I want to go from a demo into something that's actually in production in their business in weeks. So I do need to encourage the balance of innovation in the field with, okay, well, we got to have all these security controls, and that's a balancing act. I thought that was a great word.
I wonder just, for specifics here, folks, maybe you can each share one sort of standout or early standout example for you of how an AI agent product is being used for you in-house, or one that maybe you've designed in-house, whether it's for external clients or just managing day-to-day workflows, something that you feel like really captures the opportunity of this moment. Happy to go down the row.
Yeah, I think some of the early wins were in converting from sort of legacy code into the latest version of Java, say. So we've been on a mission at Citizens to modernize all of our technology. So over the last 4 years, we've completely moved everything into the cloud, including our mainframe, which is now with our partners here at zCloud. But to do that, we had to modernize a lot of the code. We had to upgrade all the databases. We had to upgrade all the operating systems, change hardware. So we actually used AI to basically rewrite millions of lines of code so we could move it to the to the cloud. And that would have taken probably years, to do just one application. But we moved thousands of applications into the cloud. Not all of them needed that level of upgrade, but the ones that did, it enabled us to do it in weeks, not months.
So at New York Life, I'm going to give a shout out to my HR team who had created an agent to help with the performance management system. So I expect, like many of the companies here, we set goals at the beginning of the year. We have a mid-year check-in. We have a year-end check-in. And as I expect many people feel, doing performance management is not something that people really, are excited to be doing, right? It's a process that can be tough on people. They don't know how to, maybe showcase accomplishments. Managers may have tough time talking about, having tough conversations and helping give really concrete, actionable feedback. And so we created this GPT that quickly became the most used GPT at the company, and still it's off the charts as everybody is using this thing. And it helps set goals at the beginning of the year. And I will mention that one of the goals that's enterprise-wide that every single employee has is an AI goal that we had introduced in 2024 that really encourages employees to leverage AI for innovative thinking. And then the GPT can help, you can really just sort of dump like what you've done for the, like when you're setting the goals, tie them to the strategic priorities, and then for the accomplishments or areas of opportunity, use it to help really flesh that out. And I think the adoption came so quickly because of two things. It really saved time and effort, because it's something that tends to take a very long time for people to do, but also because it was really effective in what it was doing, and it led to much meatier conversations. And as we look and we do some like testing and look at the forms, we're seeing much more actionable, concrete, feedback that's being given to employees as well. So that was one we introduced last year, and really, I would say, took off.
I love that.
So I'm a flashy lights guy by training. That's what I like. I like the tech. I like the delivery. I was with one of my customers last week. He divulged that he has more than 8 billion lines of custom code that is used to run his bank. That was an interesting number. That was a big number. It was a lot. I was pretty impressed that he knew the number. That was a whole different discussion. As a technologist, what it's been able to do around code, to Michael's point, is groundbreaking. For me, it's solved the Joe Ball question, right? You take, my wife is from South America. If you take a book written in South America, translate it into English, it's English, but you can't really read it. It doesn't make sense. So that's kind of how code works today. You get this COBOL code or PL1 or C, and you convert it into Java. And in theory, it's Java. In practice, it doesn't work, right? So what agentic AI has done for us is it's enabled us to build these frameworks, so with these catalogs, where you can actually recreate the database architecture. You can recreate the environment. You can actually put cloud-native code straight off of a mainframe. I have a general customer, a mid-sized customer for me, has between 20 and 50 million lines of code that is running on mainframes. And I never believed it possible. You saw the cool PowerPoint, but the tech is real and the tech works, and it's solving problems that, as a flashy lights guy, I never believed possible, and it does work. It's pretty amazing.
Liz, I'll toss it to you before time runs out.
No pressure, 31 seconds on the clock.
30 now.
Yeah, well, so I'll talk about one that's near and dear to my heart. We have a couple of different examples I could point to, but this is around how we impact the employee experience. We have over 500 expats from Japan that come every year in April. We kind of switch them out every couple of years, but when you move to a country where you don't speak the language, you don't understand the cultural norms, or you have to figure out where you're getting a driver's license, we have a whole international HR team that supports that, and the team get overwhelmed very quickly. And so what they did was build an agent that helps in their native Japanese language the expat to understand all of the things that they have to do as they begin to transition to the US. And what it does is it exponentially unlocks productivity and potential, not just for the IHR team, but for those 400, 500 expats that are coming into the US and starting to settle into their roles into a new country and having to transition, in many cases, their families and their children. So we've given them the support to be able to do that effectively.
Great. I think we're at time, but thank you for the candid conversation and the details.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody for coming today. We're going to get into software, what the market is seeing. The market kind of gives us a future look prior to the technology being implemented today. I'm Neeraj Patel. I'm a senior software analyst on the Bloomberg Intelligence team. I'm covering app software. We have a team of about 15 technology analysts. And you can see here 500 Bloomberg Intelligence analysts. We cover anything from energy, metals, mining, semiconductors, globally, Taiwan, South Korea, US. So a lot of different markets. We get a lot of collaboration. We have a lot of data interaction. So today we want to talk about this theme about AI in the marketplace. And I think what has just shocked the stock market, the technology sector, is agents. And we want to talk about agents. And I think this depiction, at least to analysts, is quite simple. Human-driven workflow is what we're used to for the last 30, 40 plus years. You log into an ERP, you put in some information in a software, it types in automatically some of the information. You have a human look at that information and you correct it, and a server has some rules, and you get a human on the other end just to check it, to approve it, and you have your expense approved for an individual. The agent workflow, you have a lot of software that's stripped out. What software is going to be retained and what is going to be used by the LLMs and other tools? That's the major issue that the market is wrestling with. And I think when we look at a couple examples, we look at marketing and coding. As the first panel highlighted, a lot of usage of coding agents, Claude and Gemini, in the workplace today. They've tackled the hardest professional information worker scope, which is unusual in terms of software disruption. But marketing is very language heavy, repetitive, data intensive. And you can see this type of cycle. You have an AI agent for marketing. It's going to retain some of the marketing campaign information, tap into a database to get the branding information data, and you get notification to the team, to Slack and Notion and other tools, and that writes back to the database. So marketing is a high area for disruption. You've seen it in the type of companies like HubSpot, like Salesforce, like Adobe. They've been the first ones that have been the most disrupted to date. Coding agents, you can see on the right, a lot of different technologies there that we've highlighted: GitLab, Dockers, VS Code, Microsoft, Datadog, and they're being disrupted. And what we think has stood out to us, and I think has stood out to a lot of people that are using the LLMs, is the step change that you see in the LLM models. And you have one benchmark here. It's a software engineering bench verified, and that just measures what % of the code is correct. Identify a bug, it'll edit that bug, and it'll produce a patch, and if it's successful, you'll see that type of score. 2024 last, in the spring was around 30% for these models. Now they're up at the 70, 80%. That is a critical point, critical level of performance. If you could help me on the clicker. Oops. And so the agentic coding, that leads into a major building block. The tool integration, we've seen some communication protocols come to the market. Prior to 2024, you had to do bespoke custom code to connect the LLM to tools. Now you have some protocols like MCP, which is coming to the market, making it much easier to interact with the CRM, the HR, the payroll application software that's in the marketplace, connecting them to an LLM, connecting orchestration as well. You can see on the right a lot of third parties with orchestration, because you don't have an agent. You have the brain as the LLM. It takes up the majority of the talking points to date, but you have a lot of tools in the workplace to get work done, and you need a lot of orchestration that has to be looped as you have errors, as you don't reach your goal. So we have a lot of technologies: Llama Index, LangChain, Crew AI, just to name a few. And you can see the developer, kind of hockey stick moves that we've seen. You can see LangChain downloads. That's an orchestration tool, and you can see this type of move. It's just stunning. You have over 250 million downloads a month. It's not all humans. You have a lot of machines doing this, but it's just a metric just to show you the interest in a major building block for agents. MCP, the communication protocol, same type of trajectory. Claude Code, an actual product. And we look at coding agents because they're the first monetizable use case for agents in the workplace. And I think Anthropic is a $9 billion annual recurring revenue run rate today. It's going to 30 billion by the end of the year. And this has never happened in the history of technology in terms of the steepness. So you have this type of building blocks in place. That has resulted in this picture. And you can see stock returns for major software companies in 2025. A lot more red than green. And overall, they were down 35% software. When you look at the left side, this is year to date. And you can see all these names that are up here. Oracle is so far the best off because it has a lot of AI infrastructure associated with it, 11%. But you can see Intuit, ServiceNow, Workday, HubSpot, they're factoring in significant disruption. And the management teams get on the earnings call every quarter, and they're citing fundamentals are constant. We haven't seen a change in recurring revenue. We haven't seen a change in the KPIs for this industry, like the contract bookings or the net revenue retention. That has stayed relatively stable. But you're seeing the stocks inflect well ahead of any disruption to their business models, which are showing up in the financials. And you can see the valuation that the market is placing here on the left side. The price to earnings for S&P 500, that blue line, is pretty constant, 20 times forward earnings. You can see the shade of lighter blue software used to be at 100 times during the COVID and the online presence by SMBs to come online and have their visibility exposed digitally. It's come down drastically. And this is because of the AI agent disruption that's still ahead. It's very early stages. And when you look at the right side, we look at software to semiconductors. And yeah, AI is eating software. There's no question in terms of the market today. And you can see this type of valuation disparity that has occurred over the last 15 months. Software used to have a sizable premium, 2.4 times. Now it's at a fraction of 0.4x. Where do we see this market? We do not. Software is an integral part of business workflow. LLMs are not going to take, from our view, application software scope in its entirety. They will take what we see as subscription, seat-based model type of work. You can imagine somebody is going into the workflow. They're not going to engage with a CRM product. It's quite sticky, the CRM today. You have to have a lot of familiarity. You have a lot of menus, bars, and buttons that somebody has gained experience over the last 12 months. Now you'd rather, the path of least of resistance is to open up ChatGPT or Anthropic Claude and just ask for the outcome and let that purpose be executed by the agent. We think the software market in totality grows 10 to 11%. But you see this type of split here. Outcome, which is agent-based or agent-led software, is going to lead that disruption. You have a lot more players coming into the market. LLM providers, SaaS incumbents are definitely going to be in this position. They are introducing every day their AI agents into their existing products as well as standalone products. You have the AI native companies, which are getting a lot of VC funding, and enterprise teams who are going to stand up their own agents. So we see a positive overall market, but below the surface, a lot of disruption for SaaS incumbents because of their business model, which relied on recurring revenue. You pay $20 for the current month per user. You get $20 for the next month. You add a couple of advanced features, and over the year, it grows to 22 and 24, et cetera. And when we look at this application software segmentation, you can see how the pie is in terms of applications. Engineering apps is relatively small, 44.5 billion. That is on the lower end of AI disruption. The closer you are to a manufacturing, and we'll get into this, is a lower tolerance. And you can see this chart. It has a lot of detail in it, but the highlight is we look at 2031, and you can see agents as apps, where the expectation is from survey across a lot of major companies and a lot of major customers. This is done by IDC and Bloomberg, and you see contact center, customer service, digital commerce, ERP, they are 100% by 2031. Finance, not the case. PLM, not the case. Procurement is on the higher end. And I think the number one determining factor for this boundary or this shift has to do with the kind of the basic story that we understand today, probabilistic software, which is on the right, and that's what you use the LLM. It gives you a probabilistic answer. You cannot have that if you're calculating payroll, right? You need an exact, precise number regardless of how many times you run the prompt. We do not need something that's close. Of course, if you're asking for the capital of France, it's going to come up 99.9% with Paris. So that's okay in those cases where you have LLM's heavy use on languages. And you can see deterministic software. This is still going to be intact and in place. Financial accounting, you need precision, as we've mentioned. Python interpreter, you need exactness. Medical device control, if blood sugar level reaches X level, you need exact Y level of insulin. And databases, you need to get the data from exact precision of row and specific characteristics. So we think there is this split. If you're on the right side, you get disrupted more. Left side, not so much. You have some runway to take advantage of the LLMs in your product portfolio. And on the right side, you can see on this table, we get into a little more detail in what we call deterministic, ERP, payments, infrastructure, accounting, payroll, and tax. You can see the name brand companies, engineering, design. And on the left side, once again, pattern-based, variability is high, failure tolerance is quite low to medium, which means you're not going to have catastrophic operational failure if the LLM comes up with a kind of right answer, right? And that's the case in customer support in some examples, sales, HR and recruiting in some cases, and in terms of finance, budgeting, and forecasting. And in terms of the numbers, we look at every major function, and it's down to maybe as small as 5 billion, which makes up this 700 billion application software market. And you can see in red, that's the highly disrupted area. Probabilistic, in green is deterministic, and you see about 39% is in probabilistic. And we think it's a hybrid, and it's going to be a mix, and you're going to see this disruption that's going to be ongoing. What is not going to stop is OpenAI and Anthropic's move up the stack. In this picture, they're already at the agent level. We're quite familiar with that. But now they're moving into the operating system, and they're moving into the runtime level. So this is on the execution front. And you've seen this move. We're waiting for OpenAI to introduce their Claude Cowork kind of example. The Claude Cowork, they came up with their 11 solutions at the end of January. That was a major impact for the software companies. The next battleground is this agent OS layer. And we think you're going to have the hyperscalers that are going to be there, and you're going to have the LLM providers. And the underdog is the ServiceNows and Salesforce per application. They're an underdog in terms of getting a space here, but let's see how it plays out. And this is just highlighting this type of major disruption that happened to the space. Who's going to pay for this, right? That's a good story about LLM. They make our lives easier. Cost is a significant issue, right? And that is right now kind of in the gray zone. At Bloomberg, they don't care how much we use chat or Anthropic or Google. I'm imagining in a year there's going to be a break, right? And it's going to be by department and by function. The LLM inference cost is significant, right? And in addition to the external AI piece, the orchestration overhead, and the human in the loop. If you have an AI agent for payroll, you're going to have somebody checking that. That's a lot of volume you're going to put on a human to exact or kind of oversee the agent. Also, another picture that we're seeing is the LLM token cost has declined quite a bit each year, 83% in 2024, another 90% in 2025. It might be plateauing. There's a realization by the LLM providers they're running into a physical constraint in energy, in data center rental, right, in water supply. So there's a lot of physical aspects to providing an LLM. And you may be seeing a plateauing in the token cost. So that's going to put a further break in terms of what applications can be used or can be leverage these LLMs. These are two detailed examples. I just want to highlight the HR payroll. When we run through this case of workflows and an agent operating in those three workflows, the impact on the gross margin. You start out with the traditional SaaS gross margin, 75%. It walks all the way down to 68.4% in this simple case. You can see the token cost, you can see the tokens used per these workflows. On the right side, marketing automation, not as severe, but still a major impact. This is 200 to 300 basis points on the gross margin. And you can see the human is not in the loop on the right side. So that's why our point that the human in the loop is a big cost here. Who's going to pay for this? The information and knowledge worker is going to pay for this, right? And this is in the US market. Total labor spending that we calculate from 83 million information workers comes to 9 trillion. If you take 5% of that, you get to close to 500 billion. So information workers, we're all seeing the headlines, Meta, Block, they're all, laying off in terms of productivity. The story from Jensen Huang and I think Elon Musk in terms of AI is going to benefit everybody is starting to, I think, lose some momentum. So we'll leave it at that. I hate to end on a negative note. I think AI is here, but somebody has to pay for this, so I think we are going to have to pay for this. Thank you. Okay, for our next session, we have scaling the intelligent workflow with modernization. So we're going to get past the kind of view of the market, and we're going to get real-life stories. Nadgauda, he's with MetLife.
Yep.
Sharmila, Ravi, Capital One, and Ratnakar, Lavu with Elevance Health. So we have a lot of variety. We're going to get into our panel and look forward to a reality check in terms of what the market is seeing. Maybe Nick and actually everybody will kick this off. Intelligent workflows, scaling intelligent workflows. What comes to your mind when I say that term?
I think there's two pieces to it, right? One is like using AI to build things that drive automation. And I think that to your point about like the deterministic workflows, like that's a big component. You can think of like your coding agents in that like what happens at runtime is very like deterministic. And then the other side of it is things that run that use AI to make decisions. And both of those, people use those terms interchangeably, but they really are two different things. And both of them are under the intelligent workflow banner.
What does it mean to you, Sharmila?
That's a great question. I've been thinking about it since you sent the questions over. One of the things that we think about at Capital One is that as you think about the intelligent workflow, this is where AI is coming into play to be your partner and your collaborator. So as Neeraj pointed out, the cost of it, you also need to be careful on where you apply it. So we are looking at intelligent workflows in two ways. Where can we improve our customer experiences, reduce the friction as one flow? And the second flow would be where do we want to improve our developer productivity and literally take care of the mundane tasks so the developers are more focused on the more creative problem solving and the subject matter expertise. As we said earlier that, I think Liz and others pointed out, that is in shortage.
Ratnakar, your take.
So for us, I think it spans across the full enterprise itself. So we start with actually the patient or the member experience piece of it. How can we, to Nick's point, both automate and build more intelligence and decision-making into the process to help the patients and members navigate the complexity of the healthcare ecosystem. The second is, between us and providers, how do we make the entire system and process much more simpler so that they don't focus as much on administrative work that they do today, but really focus on outcomes. And then the third, I think, is a tremendous amount of opportunity that we see to actually elevate how our associates provide the best service for our members and providers, and not focused as much on the mundane tasks, but really focused on providing value for our members and providers.
Great. Now, in terms of getting started, there's a big change in architecture here, moving from legacy to an AI system.
Yeah.
What is involved in that, Nick?
I mean, obviously, we have a lot of legacy. We're an insurance company, and I think everybody here probably has a lot of legacy. And I forget the gentleman's name from Citizens. I think they've been on a big program similar to what we've been on to try and modernize our tech stack. But like the biggest change in my mind is like in the past when you would have to modernize a platform because of risk, because it's old, it's unsupportable or whatever, you would try and couple like a business transformation with that. So it turned into like a humongous effort, re-engineer the business process and upgrade the platform. And now, because the way the coding agents work and some of the newer technologies, you can basically rewrite the platform in a modern tech stack without having to touch the business process. You can choose to couple them, you can choose to decouple them. And I think that has been a really big change in our viewpoint. So we're focused on business modernization, making our customers' lives better, but at the same time, the risk angle, we're just basically rewriting platforms. So keeping them the same, but just on a modern tech stack. It's basically separating those two things. And that's been a fundamental change in the way we look at things now.
And Sharmila, taking this same topic, when has your journey started in terms of shifting to an AI architecture or infrastructure?
I think at Capital One, it started much long ago before I was even there. In 2016, we got out of the data centers and moved into cloud fully. And that is the biggest thing from Capital One architecture perspective and their technology journey. Not only that we moved into the cloud, which is, at that time was hard, but the hardest part is that we looked at our capabilities. What are all the things that as a financial services we're providing to the customers? And we looked at them as a platform journey. So we're in the cloud, we have platforms of all common capabilities, our compute is in the cloud. Then we looked at the data aspects of the company. And data is critical, analytical, and your AI journey really, really starts with data. I don't have to tell you guys that, you're all nodding. So one of the things that we really took a look at is, do we know our data? Do we know that how clean it is? Do we know the lineage? Can we say that this is the source of truth that we can trust? And with that journey is where Capital One started. Now that is powering our AI journey. We feel like we're not actually taking AI as a tool. We're building the AI because we have the data, we're in the cloud, we're platforms, and we took the similar approach when it came to AI. We're not just using AI, we built an AI platform that was showcased publicly in the past. So it was one of those multi-agentic AI-enabled workflow that we have showcased. And we are using the same platform that has open source models, but customized for our data. So proprietary data is a proprietary AI win, is our thought process. So we don't look at it as use case by use case, how do we do this? We're looking at it as capabilities across the enterprise, and using our enterprise platforms, using our clean data, we're powering it to make sure that our outcome is big enough to justify the ROI and to justify the business outcomes.
And Ratnakar, on this topic of breaking the data silos in the healthcare industry, has this been the hardest technical shift for you, or does something else come to mind?
I feel like you never get out of legacy fast enough. There's a lot of complexity in large organizations like ours, right? So no matter how much you try to consolidate data, you move into the cloud and other things. So our AI journey, started with experimentation in kind of 24, implementation in 25, and scaling right now in this year. And what we're finding is there are certain things that actually break, fundamentally break. So take, for example, you need highly robust governance processes across. And then we started with AI implementations or solution. Now you get to agentic. You have to fundamentally continue to reevaluate your governance processes. You also have to think about data very differently than what it is. Do you consolidate, or do you actually build a semantic layer or a data mesh across the data silos that are there? Do you actually think about, in terms of cloud itself and cloud compute, how do you actually think about experimentation? Can you create a quick private cloud very quickly So there's a lot of things that are also kind of breaking as we are trying to scale. So we're having to rethink the entire stack itself and then continue to evolve it.
If I could just jump in on the data point, we've been on this journey to at MetLife to kind of modernize our data, get it into like modern data hubs. But one thing that's shifted now is like the priorities that we thought we had when we started now need to be like reworked in sort of real time. So if somebody comes up with an interesting use case that we want to put in, something that might not have been as important in terms of like data quality, data cleanliness in one area, now that becomes really important. So you need to like be able to pivot really quickly. So the kind of nimbleness with AI experimentation is causing all the downstream priorities to have to change a lot more rapidly than maybe in the past.
On this AI experimentation, maybe Sharmila, if you can point to cases that are bubbling to the top in terms of giving you business value.
I can touch on few. At Capital One, we looked at the common problem that all our call center agents face. They get a whole wide variety of questions from the customers, and customers are in distress or calling us in an anxiety mode and might be rushing the agent to answer quickly, and that is the moment of need for the customer, and we want to make sure that we show up well. And at the same time, our call center employees have thousands of documentation to go through and find out what is the right answer for this particular problem. So in our agentic platform, we built a service called Agent Assist. What this does is that as a customer calls in, as employee picks up the call, it is automatically presenting the options for the agent based on what the customer is saying. So it is already understanding the context of the customer, reasoning with the data it has, and be able to determine at the end what is the best answer to give to the customer. So what is this doing is that actually helping both our call center employees to do a very good job in terms of meeting the customers in their need and giving the customer the right solution. And with this, we actually had a 93% success rate that our employees that answered the call said it was right 93% of the time versus me. That is like a great training tool if you think about the newest employees coming in, and the return on investment when we scaled it to 20,000 plus call center employees, you can imagine the benefits of it and the amount of time those employees need to spend on the phone helping it. So that is one use case that is more focused on the return on investment and a common capability across all of our businesses within Capital One. The second use case we looked at is that how do we make sure that we create an experience to the customers that's beyond what's available to them today. And we deployed this in our auto loans business. As Capital One has an auto loans business, we work with both the dealers and the customers. So we took a single conversation from a customer, and that will tell our agentic platform everything it needs to know to be able to figure out what's the make and model that the customer is looking for, comparison of prices in their area, and the dealer's costs in there, and schedule a test drive, and also schedule a consult with the sales agent if that's what they're looking for. So this is like taking an input from a single conversation, understanding it, doing the comparison, and making an action, and checking back with the customer. So those two are the experiences that we rolled out, and it's all in our common platform, so we can take the same experiences and bring it to others. Those are just to name a few.
Okay. And Ratnakar, maybe from your experience so far to date in terms of agentic journey, where is it today? Where are you seeing the use cases, and how do you see it unfolding over the next 2 years?
Yeah, so as I said, we're in the scaling process this year, and I'll give you a couple of examples. So AI is actually enabling us to reimagine how we bring experiences to life. So for our members, if all of us have experienced healthcare, it's pretty complex. And so think about your benefits, then you have to find a provider, and then you have to schedule appointments with the provider and other things. And then you want to know what exactly you're going to pay for that service. So we've created, leveraging AI, And if you look at your benefit, there's a lot of pages in that if you want to try and understand that. So if you, let's say a member wants to check on knee surgery and whether it's covered in their benefits or not, we now have in our app, our Sydney app, you actually can go and you can interact with an AI agent that says, you can type in and say, is knee surgery covered? It actually comes back and it says it's covered and what you're going to pay for it. Not only does it do that, it then says, okay, I'll actually connect you with the right provider who can provide quality service for that surgery, because we also have 500 data points that we actually look at between provider and member, personalize that experience. So we were not able to do this in the past. And this is where technology actually is helping to create these robust experiences. Where I see this going in the future is continuing to build on this AI agentic experience and creating a personalized agent for the member itself and their healthcare journey. And so basically what we want is to drive to the right outcomes for the member. And that's where I see a lot of this going.
Interesting. And Nick, maybe you can give perspective on these agents that are facing customers and how you're balancing the governance aspect.
Yeah, so I mean, similar to what we talked about here, I think a lot of our AI deployment has been in the three areas: call center, claims, and developers, right? And especially and all three of the, it's not a coincidence, all three of those are very repeatable, they're very measurable, so it's like a really, targeted deployment. So in the call center, we've been able to reduce our call center volume by 30%. 9 times the volume of claims are auto-adjudicated now than they were in the past, and that's all through agentic deployment. Where we see it going forward is that sort of expanding, but we put like a pretty good governance process in place. And initially it was painful, I'll be honest with you, because it touches legal, it touches compliance, it touches architecture. So we've got a lot of different teams that are involved, and in many ways, like, you're trying to get AI in, but you've got like a manual process to actually approve the AI between the different departments. So, we stitch those together into a common workflow, are using AI now to try and streamline that process, and that has really streamlined what we're doing. But like the key point I think that made it a lot easier was really understanding where AI is used and where AI is not used. So in a lot of what we found is in a lot of our use cases, when we created some automation or tried to simplify things, there actually was no AI in the actual runtime. So once you realize that, like, those cases become like much, there's no risk, essentially. You can kind of approve them automatically. So what I would encourage everybody is, as you think about governance and you think about risk, really understand what the tools are doing and see where the risk is. And then maybe you're over-engineering your governance in some ways. And then you could simplify things pretty easily.
And what's the timeline associated with building this up?
It's probably a year and a half we've been at it, but now we've got this concept of what we call like green zones. So anything that comes in that meets the low risk case, kind of like sails through. And anything that needs more approval, human review, risky, et cetera, goes to like another more manual process. And I think that's really unlocked a lot of things for us.
Okay, maybe we pivot to a little bit. We talked about data silos and breaking that barrier. How about the quality and integrity of data, Sharmila? How are you managing that at Capital One?
I think it's an ongoing journey. As I said, we have our data platforms, and we do, have a data lakes, and ensure that we have one source of truth across the data. But it is an ongoing journey that you want to ensure that you're looking at it. Because at the end of the day, if your data is not clean and you don't know for sure its validity of it, LLMs or any agentic agents aren't going to produce anything better. We all know in technology, garbage in, garbage out kind of scenario, and it would be very costly in this aspect. So knowing your data, knowing the lineage, knowing that you don't have any duplication is an everyday job.
Okay. And now let's look at a little bit about the human in the loop in healthcare. I'm assuming there's a lot of, combination of AI and technology and human oversight. Ratnakar, if you could opine on that kind of.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we're a highly regulated industry, right? So we make, when we design our AI solutions, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. Not only we start with the governance elements of it, we want to be more transparent. We want it to have explainability as AI is making certain decisions. We actually have a platform that kind of has guardrails, bias testing, hallucination, and all of that, right? So we have a framework that through which we build actually the solution. But as we are building and designing solutions, we think about where AI should make a decision and where a human actually should intervene in a decision. And I'll give you an example. In prior authorizations, our goal and objective is to accelerate approvals on behalf of the provider, right? Because the provider is submitting a prior auth, and we want the prior auth to get approved as fast as we can if they have the relevant data. But what we don't want the AI to do is make denial decisions. So if the AI cannot make a decision, an approval decision at that point, because it doesn't have sufficient information and other things, we actually route it to a human, and then the human actually reviews that and then works with the provider to either get to approval or some other decision. But that's the kind of the framework that we use. But that actually has to start from the design. What our kind of our learnings are. You just can't go in and build an AI solution out. You have to be very thoughtful and how you build it out, and actually map out the processes. Where does a human come in? Where do you need human oversight? Even if they are not making the decision, where do you need human oversight? Where do you need human auditing in the entire process?
Nick, is your AI denying insurance claims?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I think we're also a regulated industry. We are also taking a very similar approach. I would say the bulk of where we're focused is on making the claims processing simpler. So you think about the amount of paper you get, the amount of manual stuff that people need to do, all that input into the claims agent, we're trying to streamline all that. But at the end of the day, it's our claims agents that actually make the right decision.
Okay. Just checking. Sharmila?
Very timely topic, I guess.
Yeah. Sharmila, let's talk about budgeting for AI. How do you think about that, and where does it come from?
The way we look at in Capital One is based on our imperatives and what is it that we're trying to achieve at the destination. If you're trying to look at incrementally, I think it will be hard to budget anything in the AI world. You need to look at it and say, this is the amount of call volume. If you're looking at it from call center perspective, here is what I want to reduce, and here is a journey I'm going to be on. Coding could be pretty fast, and you may be getting the features out there, but in a regulated industry, you need to make sure that you are at the right governance and monitoring and tooling. So that will take its time. What is your threshold for any risks in there is what comes into play. So it is one of those journeys that you need to define your destination and then want to be marching towards it. And the efficiencies that you gain through it is what the budgeting process is.
Can I kind of one point on budgeting?
Yes.
Because I think it's actually a very fascinating topic, because you wouldn't think budgeting is that fascinating, but it kind of is, because you're really moving from CapEx to an OpEx model, right? And at least for us, right? And I would imagine for everybody, you've got cost centers, you've got manual budgets, you've got all that sort of stuff, right? And now you got this variable cost, and you got to figure out who and where you're going to park that variable cost. So that is a big discussion that we have constantly, what's the right way to do that? And I would imagine a lot of people are probably grappling with that same topic.
Yeah.
It's a challenge to find a separate cost center for it. You got to kind of think of a self-funding aspect from the technology perspective, saying that what am I going to reduce in terms of my OpEx so I can self-fund, what you need to do.
Ratnakar, how about your input on your measurement of ROI for your monetization effort?
Yeah, so tokenomics is real.
Yeah.
And we watch it carefully, because I think your point that you made, I do think the cost structures are going to change fundamentally in large enterprises as we continue to roll out AI more at scale. The key question that I think about is, I like the way you kind of showed it. What is the return on the investment? Okay, token costs are increasing, but is there truly a return on the investment for that increase? And then are there opportunities within an enterprise where you can get offset? So for example, we go in and look at the entire landscape of technology and then continue to optimize that to offset the token cost increase. But then the bigger thing I think that we're really focused on is the value creation within the enterprise. And we see tremendous amount of potential in terms of return on investment. By the way, we measure this carefully. The call center example is a great one, wherein when you actually automate and put intelligence into the desktop or the information that the call center agent has to use, they service them much better at higher kind of intelligence and value, and then that is leading to better NPS scores. So there's a whole set of parameters that you can actually look at and monitor, and you have to do that to see how is this cost yielding in terms of what results it's actually yielding.
Okay. We're coming up on time, but I want you guys to give your advice on the biggest pitfall to avoid so far in your terms of your agent investment or your AI journey.
Go ahead.
All right. I think for us, at least, there was a top-down strategy, which is essentially kind of re-engineer big processes, inject AI at the right points. And I think adoption was not, an issue there because you kind of forced adoption. Then you've got like the bottoms-up strategy, which is like roll out tools to people, make them useful, try and get people to use them, sort of like your Claude or GPT kind of thing. And what's happening now is like those things are meeting in the middle. And like with new tools like Cowork and Frontier, like how that stuff in the middle is going to meet is going to be really tricky. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about that, and I would encourage everybody to think about that before you roll those things out pretty broadly.
From our perspective, and I'll speak also as a technologist, when a tool is given to you, something new, exciting, everyone wants to experiment with it. You end up doing a lot of demos. You will see a lot of cool stuff. But then again, if you have over 100,000 technologists, they're going to produce 100,000 different type of demos for the same exact work. So I would caution that the excitement on adopting, especially on the technology space, is not always positive, and it could be costly both from the time perspective and the tool cost perspective. So one of the things that we did run into and then learned is how do we build a reusable skills for our associates. So not every engineer has to figure out how to get my code reviewed for the enterprise standards. Not everyone has to build something new for that type of a mundane task. How about that we actually build an enterprise level skill and deploy it to all of our engineers so they're not spending time on it. So watch out for the demos. They all look cool, but they will cost you quite a bit of developer time and the tools before it gets to the production. So giving them some guidance, giving them some reusable skills that they should all be adopting, and creating new things should be reserved for creative problem solving would help all of us.
Yeah, just tagging on to that, I think every enterprise, by the way, every individual, I think, should lean into AI. But then there's also this notion of FOMO that's going on. Like there's so many vendors and partners who are coming in and saying, oh, by the way, I've solved the world's problems and stuff. I think just be extremely thoughtful because I've seen a lot of technology where they said they can solve many problems and other things, but it's actually pretty complex. I mean, you have to do it extremely thoughtfully as you kind of build and implement AI solutions within large enterprises. And then the second thing that I would say is change management.
Yeah.
Change management in companies, especially when you're redesigning processes, implementing AI, don't underestimate that. It is one of the most complex things. Actually, it's actually not even the technology, it's the change management that's the most complex things that we have found, because taking people who cannot see the future and the vision and then saying, here's the art of the possible, and then taking them through that journey takes a while, and then getting them educated takes a while, and then having them adopt it and embrace it also takes a while.
Great, that wraps up this session. So you heard it here from our experts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Neema and I have only met over video, so this is the first time we're in person. And he said he was going to wear a hoodie, and I was like, okay, you can do it. And you brought me one.
Goldman Sachs engineering hoodie.
I heard these are hard to come by.
A hot commodity.
They are?
Hot commodity.
Okay, so I'm going to have to hold on to this. Hopefully my kids don't get it because they love hoodies nowadays. So we've been talking about AI strategies and data strategies. The last panel talked a lot about data too. They got a lot into it. Neema is actually Goldman Sachs, so he's the chief data officer, also head of data engineering. So he's the right person to talk to about this. You've been with Goldman Sachs for about 20 years. Your partner. So if you could just take us through, for the audience here, take us through your journey, like how you started and how do you get to where you are today, and what your day includes in a day, like what you do day to day.
I'll try to summarize 23 years in 1.5 minutes.
Exactly.
Let's see if I can do it. So I started at Goldman. I studied computer science. I'm a Cali kid. I studied computer science. I right out of college joined Goldman in technology in the deep back office, in the bowels of the back office. From that first experience of being like an analyst, learning like what an enterprise is, like what's going on. And then in 2008, what happened, this was 5 years in, I was still a kid in my 20s, 5 years, financial crisis hits. And everyone's like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, are any of these banks going to exist anymore? Are we going to exist anymore? And so I give a lot of credit to the leadership there. We actually took a data-driven approach to the financial crisis. We had a group called Core Strats. This was the front office quant teams who were basically put in charge of like, how are we going to figure out our exposure to all of these bankrupt companies? And we got very lucky. Where other banks were started going through the filing cabinets trying to find their ISDAs, we actually had all of our OTC derivative trades in one place. It's called SecDB. And so these quants were coming around the whole firm, sort of scouring from the middle and back office, like what data we could bring together to sort of understand our exposure to Lehman or other banks. And they actually tapped me from the deep back office. They're like, oh, you might know something about liquidity risk. Because at that point, I had been sort of on this learning journey about what the front office is, learning about banking, and so I was like, this curiosity sort of put me in a position where they're like, okay, you seem like you could help us. And I was like, yes, I could help you. And so from that point on, we actually built this aggregated database to tell us all of our counterparty exposure, which again was sort of a novel idea in 2008, where everyone was sort of focused on market risk. And funny story, that database actually won a prestigious award at Goldman that was usually given to the bankers for the best M&A transaction. The database won that award that year, not even our team, just the database. And that sort of started my personal sort of data journey at Goldman. This was like when it sort of clicked with me, wow, like financial services, the power is in the data, bringing it together, giving insights. And it turned out the really, really cool thing was not only that this database won this award for saving the firm not going bankrupt, but that after that project, after we had weathered the storm, people started finding more business use cases to use that data. So the traders and the quants and the salespeople would come to us and I'd be like, oh, we didn't know that if we could join settlements data with this data, with this data, with this data, we could actually help our clients trade better. And so it turned out that like this thing that was meant to like, as a risk thing ended up being a business idea generator and a client idea generator. So that was sort of a journey that I was on, but also the firm sort of realizing that, oh my God, like data's not just this weird exhaust, right, from like what we do, but actually could be a differentiator.
Now, you talk about data. A lot of companies want to use AI to gain this edge. So why is data strategy, so important? Why is that where people have to focus first before you get to
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so I think everyone sits around and says like, oh, data, it's like the fuel of AI, and oh my God, garbage in, garbage out. But like, I'm not sure anyone actually explains like why. Why is that? Why does it matter? Like why? And here's my personal mental model. This is the way I've taught myself. So maybe a learning moment. Let's see if hopefully I'm not being too basic here. But for the last 60 years or 40, whatever of computer science, it's basically been you hire someone like me and my team, we sit in front of a keyboard and we write rules into the computer. We like type rules. We're like, if you click this button, send an email. Like if you push this button, it like starts a YouTube video. Like if you type these keys, like a Word document will appear. And like those are rules codified in the computer. Like we actually write that code that then does those things when people interact with the computer. Like that's what we call like rules-based computing, right? The whole AI thing has sort of shifted that. And here's my mental model of AI. My mental model of AI is instead of me typing rules into the computer, right? What AI is doing is it's actually learning by example. It's learning the rules by example. So like the first version of AI was like you take 1 million pictures of cats in like different poses, and you feed all those 1 million pictures to the computer, and you're like, this is what a cat looks like. This is like what a cat looks like in a tree. This is what a cat looks like on the street. This is like what a cat looks like here. This is what the back of the cat looks like. This is what, and so you have like 1 million pictures, and then what happens from there is that the computer sort of starts learning what a rule of what a cat might look like in other settings. So then you give it a different picture of a cat it's never seen. You put the millions aside, you show a new picture, and it's like, oh, that's a cat, because I've learned from what a cat might look like from these million things, right? That's it. It's just learning by example, learning the rules by example. Now, what are the examples? The examples are data. That's what the examples are. So that is the reason why everyone talks about data, because you need those examples to basically teach the AI what you're trying to do. So if you give a bunch of wrong examples, it's just like raising a kid. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-month-old. Like you give them a bunch of wrong examples, they're going to draw the wrong conclusion from those examples. Same exact thing with the AI. You give a bunch of data about what you want it to learn. If you give the wrong data, it's not going to learn the right thing.
No, I appreciate that because you explained it so perfectly, and like you have young kids, like you're no, but it makes sense. So all that said, what is your strategy? Like when it comes down to it, what is your strategy?
Yeah, so a lot of people when they talk about data strategy, and especially if you talk to technologists, they'll start talking about the infrastructure and, oh my God, I have to pick this vendor, or I have to get to this cloud, or I have to put all my data in some infrastructure. We have at Goldman, we have a totally different thesis. We actually start from the business concepts. We start from the business workflows and the business concepts. And this is sort of like the way we've been doing data for the last 10, 15 years. You start with what is a trade? What is a counterparty? What is an OTC derivative? And you sort of start building this mental model of finance through data. So you say a trade, okay, it has a buy-sell flag, it has a quantity, it links to a counterparty, it links to a firm account, it links to this OTC derivative product or whatever. And so we started on this journey of building basically a data graph of what the concepts in finance are. And that is actually a joint venture between engineering. We call ourselves engineers because that's the cool way to say technology now. Yeah. That is a joint effort between engineers and subject matter experts in that whatever data domain we're actually trying to model. So if we're trying to talk about our HR data, we actually sit with the HR people who are experts in HR, not the HR engineers, the actual HR experts, and we're like, well, what does a person mean at Goldman Sachs? And what is an employee? And how does that work, and what does it mean to be a leaver, and what does it mean to join, and how many join dates can you have? And so like you actually sit together and you build this shared understanding of the data and this shared ownership of the data. And we do that across all of our lines of business, all of our investment functions, all of our non-investment functions, through the whole stack. And you start building this sort of knowledge graph or this understanding of all your data. Then us as engineers, I run the data engineering team as well. Then we sort of help the firm then project that into whatever infrastructure people want. So it could be, a really fast database you need for this thing, but you really need a deep analytics thing for this thing. And so from those concepts, then we could do the sort of engineering work in the background, but everyone has a shared understanding of the data, and then they could query that data in that shared understanding. That's the pretty cool part that I think sets us apart from what other people talk about.
So what are some of the challenges that you might face? Because I know we've had different questions from the audience come in. One was about cybersecurity, like how do you address the issue of data security, keeping everything secure?
Yeah, look, we have a thesis on security. First of all, we have like the best CISO in the world, so that's like helps a lot, and the team and our security team is the best. But we sort of have this thesis about cloud infrastructure that maybe is contentious, but basically at these hyperscalers, they basically can spend billions of dollars on security and data security and cybersecurity. And so our thing is like, we like that. We like that you could spend $10 billion on making sure everything in the hyperscaler is secure, and we'll just leverage that. We make sure that all of our data is encrypted, that all of our entitlements are super precise, that like you can't see what I could see because we sit in two different functions, we have info barriers and things like that. So those are all like rules that we built, like business logic rules we build on top of the infrastructure, but from an infrastructure perspective, we think like that's the best sort of security way to go.
Now, when you're talking about implementing AI, let's say you were talking about data, is it the same with generative AI? Is it the same with agentic AI? Is it the same strategy that you use?
Yeah, so the AI, again, I'm going to talk my own book here because I'm the data person. Yeah. So I think it always starts. I think it always starts with the data. We just, again, our thesis is humans needed to understand the data, and now AI needs to understand the data. Same difference. The agent. It's actually even worse for an agent or AI. Like the agent or AI can't go ask another human in ops, like, wait, what did you mean by this field? Did you really mean that this account, or did you mean this custodial account? So like a human could go to a human and ask like what that data means. Agents can't do that. So again, this shared understanding, this graph understanding, this explanation of what a trade is, codifying that in the computer, what a trade, and how is a trade linked to a counterparty, and how is the counterparty linked to this and this, like that, building that sort of knowledge, understanding, what we call a semantic layer or whatever, that becomes the power of how an AI could understand the world of Goldman Sachs and the knowledge of Goldman Sachs and the understanding of Goldman Sachs. So for us, we've been doing AI for a long time. It started with traditional ML and things like that. It's always been the same thesis, like get your data in an understanding for the humans and the machines, and like great things will happen from there, basically.
Can you give any specific use cases? Like how is Goldman Sachs using AI?
Yeah, I think a few of these panels have talked about some of the things. Like, first of all, I would say, like, if you have an engineering organization, a tech organization, and they're not 100% all using agent coding tools, like you're way behind now. And like way behind, like way behind. Like and again, I'm going to tell you guys, I've been an AI skeptic for a very long time. If we were on this panel a year ago, I told Marco, who's our CIO, like this stuff doesn't work at all. Like this doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Like and I spend like 6 hours a day writing code. I was like, this doesn't work. Like 6 months ago, the whole world changed. And the stuff is like superhuman. It's like incredible. It's like blowing my mind how insane it is right now. So from a developer thing, like your team has like, even if you're outsourcing your tech, you better tell those people that they better be using like coding agents. Like it's just the world has made some crazy step function here that like is going to leave everyone behind who's not doing it. So that's like a slam dunk productivity one. Like you just got to do that. There's some other productivity things people have talked about. Like yeah, sure, you got to roll out, you know, Copilot for your emails and chats and whatever. Like the real stuff. Like I really think about is what gives Goldman Sachs an edge. What gives Goldman Sachs an edge in the future? Like when knowledge is sort of commoditized, when everyone sort of has the same knowledge, like what is left of Goldman Sachs? And I think a few of our key business leaders, I'm going to attribute it to them. This was sort of their idea, but like there's an importance. We think there's an importance of a shared understanding and a shared knowledge of what happens at Goldman Sachs. There's a tribal knowledge of people sending emails, and I had this meeting, and I did this, and we need to sort of codify that for the whole organism, for the whole Goldman Sachs organism. So building sort of this, what a colleague of mine, Chris Scherzer, would call like an intelligence layer for Goldman Sachs. You could ask any question and get any answer, but not just and not just humans could ask questions, but agents could ask questions. Agents could ask questions and then derive some insight from that question, and then sort of push the answer to that insight back into this intelligence layer. So that's like, I think, one of the most fundamental like things we're working on. And then I'd say something that we're thinking about, but this is sort of like the end dream state, is taking real trading and PM workflows and sort of thinking about how to decompose those into humans and agents becoming superhuman. So like an agent helping you build your thesis, an agent helping you execute your thesis, an agent then helping you look at the outputs of your thesis and then feeding that back and doing the whole loop. So I think thinking about workflows across sales and trading, banking, whatever, like that's where the real value, I think, is going to accrue.
You're leading into my next question. Where do you see the most value? Is that?
Yeah, I think reimagining workflows so that the humans are superhuman. I'm an eternal optimist about humanity. So I have a huge thesis that like this is not going to destroy the world and it's not going to take everyone out of jobs. Like sure, there's going to be some jobs but like I actually think all of this is like giving us superhuman abilities to do whatever we want to do better, faster, cheaper. And so I think the value is going to accrue to those people who are like super interested in learning, super analytical, think like outside the box, and then let this AI help you become like a super intelligent version of that. So like whether you're a trader, like okay, it used to take me hours and days and weeks to come up with one hypothesis, but now I could come up with 10,000 in an hour. Or I'm a salesperson and I used to have to read all the stuff and I used to have to do this and this to tell one client like this is maybe what you should do, but now I could do that personalized across thousands of clients and I could help them personalize it to that. So like it's really about reimagining, I think personally, the killer use case is reimagining these workflows of how this stuff makes you a superhuman in your role.
Yeah, and the last few seconds we have left, I can't have you here without asking, how do you use AI on a personal level? Like when you're home, like how are you using AI?
Yeah, so I put my 4-year-old to sleep at 8 p.m. and from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. I'm writing code, agent code. I'm not writing the code, I'm telling the agent what to do with my code. So that's the first thing I'm doing about 6 hours a day. The other thing is when I'm not doing that, I'm building tools for my 4-year-old and my 8-month-old. So I built like a interactive story generator for my 4-year-old, so he could pick the character, he could then pick the setting, he could also pick the style of the drawings, and then he could pick the sort of theme, and it sort of builds like a nighttime story for him that's personalized to him and what he's picked, which I think that's been my favorite thing to do.
That is awesome. Who knew you could do that? Neema, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. That was fantastic. Come on this way. Oh my gosh. Who knew? Thank you, everyone. We're going to wrap everything up. I just want to thank all of our speakers who came out here today, all of you for taking such an active part and writing your questions and just being such an attentive audience. Also, of course, I also want to thank Kyndryl for being such a great sponsor and for giving us all those tidbits of information. If you want to find out some more information about them, all you have to do is go to the resource part of our event website, and you can find out some more information there. Also, if there was something you heard here that you don't quite remember, maybe it was someone was already asking me, where was that slide? How do I find that slide? Go to BloombergLive.com, and you can go back and you can watch the video on demand. So thank you again, everyone coming here. Thank you again, everyone at home on the live stream. Have a good night.